Okay, so this is what used to be the old Enviro hut. It is now the old Enviro hut because they now have a new and fancy one that they can actually fit in. So yes, it's a lot bigger, a lot roomier, doesn't leak, very nice. Alison and Alice, who sort all the stuff and work out what we're doing with Enviro, are out at the moment, but they'll be back in 2 minutes, so we'll see them then. Okay, so this is Alice and Alison. They're our superb Enviro team, and they're going to tell us what goes on in Enviro. So what do you guys do here?
So we take samples from up on site. People fill buckets of dirt and they bring it down to us, and we process it through a method called flotation, where we wash all the dirt away and lightweight things float to the top and are collected, and what's left behind is called the residue. If you look over there,
here's what we made earlier.
That's one we made earlier, thank you. So that's what we do with the residue. We use tweezers and little pots, and yes, Miriam's showing you now. We pick out things like pieces of bone and charcoal and snails, pieces of shells, and things like that. And once we've done all that, Alison counts it and records it, and it goes in the archive. And then if people are interested in doing research on environmental topics, they can come to us and look through the records for what contexts have what sorts of pieces they're looking for. And then they go through our boxes, which are in Old Enviro, and then they can do research. So for example, we have our Dutch student from Leiden University this summer, Milou, and she is doing research on grains and grain cultivation in the Netherlands and trade. So she's going to be looking at the burnt grain from the settlement site and seeing if she can identify species, how much grain we have, what sort of context we find it in, information like that. Yeah.
Okay. So when you do all this, how exactly does it sort of aid the excavation as a whole? Like, how does it aid our understanding of it? So like you mentioned, people can do environmental projects on it, but how does it help us now?
Well, there's a lot of ways Enviro can help with the understanding of the site as a whole. So, for example, this that we're looking at right here, this sample is from the dog burial that we found on site earlier this season, where there was a whole articulated dog skeleton. And so by sorting, we had them take an environmental sample from all the dirt that was directly below that dog.
These are probably from the dog.
We have some teeth that we think might be from the dog, and other things that are associated with it. And so basically the biggest thing that environmental research does that helps with other excavations is you can tell at a smaller level the differences between different contexts. So you might be looking at a midden pit and people are telling you there's 2 fills here, and you're sort of like, well, it's all a garbage dump. People were throwing in the garbage, does it really matter what garbage it was? And if people take samples from the different contexts, we can tell them, like, in this layer there was a lot of fish bones, more than usual, so we know that they were probably eating fish at that period of time. Whereas in these later layers, we're seeing a lot more big animal bone, like cow, and not as much fish. And we think that that can show how people's diets may have changed. Or on a really micro level, another member of the environmental team does research on soil. And so by looking at plant remains that are only visible through microscopes left behind in soil, she can learn things about land use or where plants were grown. That can be really important and interesting, but because it's microscopic, you can't see it when you're excavating. So really, when people excavate, environmental research helps build a better, more full picture of the world the people were living in at the time.
Okay. And it was quite helpful on 23 when we were looking at the ovens and helping determine if they were grain drying or not, right?
Yeah, well, when we first found the ovens before we did any environmental samples from it, they found a lot of charcoal, but before they really started digging them, they thought it's possible that they were pottery kilns, because we were finding pottery near the first oven when it was uncovered in 2013. And it wasn't until they brought the environmental samples down and people started, Alison was working in Enviro then, and they started floating them. And what did you guys find?
A heck ton of grain.
That's a good, it's okay. Okay. Sorry.
It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, the samples from the ovens, mostly charred grain and charcoal. So much. And it's all quite delicate, so even flotation and residue sorting can destroy some of it. But if they were only excavating it and not bringing environmental samples, then more of it would have been destroyed.
And our
And you
botanic.
wouldn't learn
Yeah.
much from it.
Exactly. Because our botanic assemblage is really unique, and that's why we have people coming to study it. Because for most contemporary sites in Norfolk, from the Saxon period, the grain that they have is in such bad shape that it can't be identified by species. Whereas ours is really well preserved because of the ovens, particularly. So, environmental research is helping to build, at Sedgeford particularly, is helping to build a better picture of grain cultivation in East Anglia in that time period, the Mid-Saxon period. If I thought ahead, we could have demonstrated the grain, but it's elsewhere on site right now.
So basically, Enviro is really important to this
Yes.
project.
Enviro is really important.
If you want a full picture of the site you're working on, then the environmental archaeology gives you a better picture of sort of just little day-to-day things that would have been going on, like the food.
Or climate,
Yeah.
or all sorts of things. And sometimes we find interesting things like
There was
a glass bead.
the other day.
So really
Tiny,
small.
tiny bead.
Yeah, so even things that aren't natural.
Possibly Roman.
Yeah. So even small things that aren't natural can end up in Enviro samples, and then, we get to add small finds, which is always nice.
Yay!
Okay.
Okay, thanks a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, not right now. If you
It's
want,
important. Pay attention to it.
yeah. If you want to come back and do another video,
I may do, yeah. So I may see you again.
Smart.
Okay, thanks a lot. You've been great.
Hollywood. I'm on the road to fame.
You've been great. Thanks a lot.